Well, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to some of you drivers and fans watching around the world. My name is Anthony McCrory. Welcome to a very interesting start to a broadcast. A bit of technical difficulties has gotten us to where we're at this current moment, but we are here live at Road America for the 2 hours of Road America for the USRA America Le Mans Series. Again, I am Anthony McCurry. So glad that you have come along to join us. I am by myself tonight, as it seems we have a couple of drivers on the racetrack that would normally have joined me, but they have opted to race here tonight. So you're stuck with me for the remainder of the evening, and thank you again for joining us this evening. We are under the safety car. The race had started before the broadcast had gone up, so we are now running under the safety car for an incident that we cannot go back and see, unfortunately. We do not have the ability to go back and look at that as we came in late, but we will hopefully get some insight rather later on in the race as to what caused that incident. We are again a 2 hour long race. It's going to be a longer race than last week. If you missed last week, then you missed one epic showdown at VIR. It was probably the most chaotic race that we've had all season, and it ended up with, I believe there was 3 or 4 different lead changes in prototype alone that really set up the winner of that race, which was Justin Erb, which is actually running in the second place position right now. And the leader at the moment in P2 would be Alex Witt. He was leading for the majority of the race, and then he had a bit of an off track and ended up in the tire barrier. That allowed, I believe it was Grant at one point to take the lead, and then he had a bit of an off track, and then a couple of other drivers. Dan Neese was the other one that went off at Oak Tree, had a issue there, so he was not able to really do much of anything with that night, and that handed the lead over to Justin Erb, who was able to nurse it around the track. But as you see our drivers running around, we have 14 drivers here tonight, which earlier in the night it was kind of a skepticism of whether or not we would have more than 10. We have 14 actually, and a lot of prototypes in this field. Alex Witt qualified on pole, that much we do know. He was running in a very fast car for the majority of practice and qualifying from all the information we gathered. So he will be continuing to lead, as I believe the yellow flag came out at the very start of the evening. Tyler Landenberg, will go back to him. He is the leader and the pole sitter from GT2. 4 GT2s represented. We have a few new faces in GT2. We'll have to get to them in a few moments. And back in GT3, a very small GT3 field tonight. Only 3 cars running on track. That'd be Scott Rankin, Travis Stevens, and Warren Keith, who would normally be marshalling this event. He has found himself in an opportunity where he can drive the car, and he is driving in a very nice livery. That is a Flying Lizards livery. If you remember the old days of ALMS and all that, then you'll remember the Flying Lizards team, and the Audi specifically for this car is who he will be driving with. So good to see an Audi on the field, as I am a bit of an Audi fanboy. We are about to set these cars underway yet again for the remainder of the race. 2 hours, 50 minutes to go in the race, and we are back underway. It looks like it's going to be Alex Witt getting a nice run out of the get-go. He's going to be pulling himself a gap about to Justin Erb, and then back to him. We see that it's going to be Kevin Hurley going to be chasing him down. Dan Neese, who has won 2 of the 3. Oh, we have a car off track. That's Mitchell has binned it off the racetrack. Looks like that he locked the wheels up and actually kind of spun it, or not really spun it, but just locked up going into the first turn, and he's going to go back to pit road. Looks like there's going to be no safety car for this incident, but he will have a considerable amount of damage on the front end of that prototype. It looks like he might have just locked him up going into turn 1 and could not get it stopped in enough time. They were being very quick up at the in that section of the racetrack, but now we have a battle for the lead. Justin Erb going for the overall lead over Alex Witt. He's going to get it. Erb looking for his second win of the season. Witt looking to kind of claw back anything that he had from VIR, as a lot of these prototype drivers are going to try and keep VIR in the past, as It was one of the most intense races, as we touched on at the beginning. It was one of the more intense races for these prototype drivers, but now on a more sensible track for these prototypes. As I'll admit, I think that these cars might have been a little too quick for VIR, but it brought on some spectacular racing as they're going now towards Canada Corner. This battle for the Prototype 2 lead is still very, very close as they're going to go down. We're going to see a dive bomb from Witt. Yes, we are. To the inside of the racetrack goes Witt. Not really anything to do there, so now Erb will pull away to an advantage going around this section, the final section of the racetrack, and we are going to have a pretty clear-cut leader at this moment in time overall. Back to GT2, it's going to be Landenberg, and he is looking for another great run. Didn't win last week, but he is on a hot streak. None of the drivers from GT2, except for Landenberg, made tonight's race that was there the last time out. So we'll have to see what he can do as far as that goes. As we are looking at, I believe that is the, not really, I was looking at something else on the relative. I'm looking at something completely different to what my point was going to be. Here's what the point I was trying to make was, is that is Michael Della Sala making his first start in the GT2 category. I was saying that none of the other drivers, apart from a couple of them, were really in the GT2 field last week at VIR. There's a lot of drivers that have made their way into this race via signing up later, whatever have you. In fact, all four of our drivers, apart from Landenberg in the GT2 category, are actually new. Della Sala running in second place on another Corvette, as you see back here. This is an FRN regular, Caleb Smith, in the BMW, making a beautiful start for that Buzz Lightyear car. I actually saw that in the all of the practice sessions a little bit earlier on. He's actually going to bend it off the racetrack into the sand trap, going into the carousel. That could have been avoided, I feel, but I think he was under pressure from one of the prototypes, that being, I believe that was Mitchell, who came back on racetrack and now is running very well indeed. He's trying to catch back up. I don't think he lost. I think he did lose a lap, but he's now back on track. But I was saying that this car is a beautiful car and really doing a good service here. We'll have to see what he can do in this current moment. Looking back to the GT3 lead, we have Warren Keith, who's made his way up to the lead of GT3 in the Audi R8. He's showing some pace. He put down a really fast lap in qualifying, didn't really do anything much in practice, but when in qualifying came around, he was one of the fastest, if not the fastest car. Well, he was the fastest car, obviously, in qualifying, but he's been one of the faster cars that we've seen tonight, as he has got some pace in the R8, which we didn't really see much of at Sebring. They haven't made a start since Sebring, and that really shows us how little faith that some of these drivers have in the R8 as a whole, but he is running very well at the moment. We'll have to see if he can continue this lead. There's a long race ahead of us, and this particular one, I'd say we still have about an hour and 45 minutes to go in the race. Thank you once again for joining us. It's been a bit of a chaotic start, but we got it underway. And if you're here watching this race and you're also might be watching the 24 Hours of Spa, there is a lovely race going on over in Belgium at the moment with the GT3 cars, the only GT3 class, or the only class in that race in. It's been a really intense race over there so far. We've had rain, we've had debris, we've had a lot of, I think we have a couple of full course yellows on that race, and I believe Ferrari is leading the Pro-Am class, which is a little bit suspicious from the other drivers, I'll be honest. The Alpha course, or AF course, I should say. I've got a lot of team names mixed up recently, but AF course are doing a good job there as we look at Justin Erb, who is still leading the way. I am going to keep an eye on Justin Erb because he is one of those drivers that had, like I said, he won last week, but he won kind of because he inherited the lead, not because he had overall pace. He does seem to have overall pace here tonight at Road America. Someone that we haven't seen have the pace that I thought was going to have pace to be one of the ones in the lead of the race is Dan East, although he is making a charge up towards these front two. I'm really not sure how much these front two are pushing in prototype either. It looks like that he might be saving his stuff. Again, it's a long race, a lot of time for you to make up positions around this really long racetrack, over a 4-mile racetrack, this one. And it is one of the most historic tracks in North America, one of the most fun tracks in North America, with there's a bit of a plume of smoke in the carousel. I wonder why that's a thing. Had to have been there recently. Maybe one of these drivers got a little bit locked up a little bit. Now it looks like that Witt's going to have a run going down to Canada Corner. I think it might have been Justin Erb that had that issue. It's going to go down into Canada Corner side by side around the outside of the racetrack. Can he get the move done? Oh, he used all of the rumble strip he could have, but he could not get the move done now through the final section of the racetrack. He is right there, though. He could make a run up into the first turn. We'll have to see if he has the run out of the final turn. I don't think he does. Snaking up the hill towards the start-finish line, and not really anything going for that effort. I say that, and he's actually pulled alongside going into turn number 1. What can he accomplish this time around the outside? Oh, he almost, I think he's off track just a little bit, but he carried the momentum through, and that is going to be the lead of the race to Alex Witt. A great run, a fantastic move around the outside of turn number 1, but now Erb is going to have the run coming out of turn number 3, going down into turn 5. What can he do now as they're alongside down the straight? And don't look now, but Dan Neese is closing in on this battle. Hard braking into turn number 5. It looks like it's going to be Erb taking the lead back. A great battle for the Prototype 2 lead here in the early stages of this race. It's going to be a day to night race as you see the sun beginning to set. We had this similar situation at VIR. It was a extremely late race going into nighttime. We only had a few hours of, not even a few hours, a few minutes of total darkness. These drivers likely to experience a little bit more than that, but not completely, as this track does not have very good night lighting around the racetrack. So these drivers will have to rely on their headlights if we get into some of these darker hours. And right now we are not at that point, so we'll have to see what we get later on. But here comes, that's going to be Witt again for the lead of the race on Erb. And Erb is trying to battle back, but Witt's got the overall pace. This is about to be a 3-car fight for the Prototype 2 lead. We're going to stay on this battle. This is the closest battle of the race. Oh, there's contact between Erb and Witt, and Erb's off the track into the tire barrier. That's going to open the door for Dan Neese in the 14. He's going to try and get around going down the front straightaway, and at the line, it is going to be Dan Neese inheriting the lead of the race, although he slowed down just a bit. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but now he's going to get into the lead of the race. A comfortable lead. Oh, he's on the rumble strip, but he holds it onto the racetrack, and now Witt is going to be battling with him for the race lead. But Erb has binned it. I don't know if he's gotten back on track or not. I think he has. We're going to go check him. He is back on the racetrack. We're about ready to catch the back end of the GT3s. We're going around Rankin at the moment. This has been an intense couple of corners for these Prototype 2s, as now we're in turn 5 yet again. It looks like Witt is sticking right with Neese. I think the reason why Witt and Erb were getting caught were because they were battling side by side for the majority of the lap, but now that they're running single file, Witt's showing some pace. How much of his tires has he used up, though, is the question that we're going to be asking as Neese continues to try and gap himself back to the second place position, of Alex Witt, who is now going to be falling back even further through the carousel. There might be a little bit of damage on the back end as he got ran into ever so slightly by the 23 car. Back to GT2, it looks like it's going to be Tyler Landenberg with a comfortable lead, actually, about a 7.5 second lead over Michael Della Rosella, which is going to have about an 11-second gap back to Caleb Smith after he had his off track. The other driver that is brand new to this class, also in a Corvette, is Noel Hanna, running in the 7 Corvette. Beautiful paint scheme on that car, I should add. A nice teal and purple, and I just like the way that scheme looks on this car. I think it's really nice. Warren Keith running in the lead of GT3 has actually opened up about a 2-second gap back to Travis Stevens, and in fact, those two are miles ahead of Scott Rankin, who is about 26 seconds back to Stevens. So these two kind of soldiering on as the only two GT3s that really have any pace tonight. Landenberg in a world all of his own. We go back to prototype and we look at Kevin Hurley in the number 21 machine. He is got some pace. He's actually about, I'd say, 5.5 seconds back to our leaders, Witt and Nice. He's been making steady progress on these leaders at the current moment, as he is he's trying to gap the field just a bit. They're both trying to gap the field. They're actually going to run up on these other GT3s in a few moments' time. I think they're going to catch them on the run down into Canada Corner, so it shouldn't be too intense for these drivers at this stage in the race as they're going through the carousel at the moment. And if we get to they're going to catch them on the straight. This is an interesting part to catch them, though, is that there is that little bit of kink going down the straight, and they are going to make the passes easily, as no one is going to really have an issue. And now we're going to go on board. Looks like he's going to get easily past the Audi of Warren Keith, and now continues to lead the way. Does Dan Nice out of Canada Corner. He's actually put a bit of a gap between himself and Witt now over the course of these couple of corners, as now it is going to be all Witt at the front of the field. I'm sorry, it's going to be all Nice at the front of the field with about a 2-second advantage over Witt at the moment. This is the USRA America Le Mans Series. I am Anthony McCurry. Again, thank you for joining us. Right quick, we're going to take a quick side-by-side for some commercial breaks, and we'll be right back to you momentarily. You won't miss a thing. Side-by-side with FRN Side-by-Side Sound and Vision on the Flatout Racing Network for the 2 hours of Road America. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the USRA American Le Mans Series. We're actually on commercial break, and we didn't realize this, but now we have the Prototype 2 leaders going through the GT2 leaders, which there was a bit of an off for Landenberg. You can see a little bit of damage on the back end of the Corvette entry. Looks like that there has been an off track or something that's happened to this 91. He had a pretty big lead. You got to think that there might have been something that happened to him to have De La Sala catch up and then pass. But now there's a battle in GT2 brewing between these two Corvettes as they're right side by side going down the front straightaway. Looks like it's going to be Landenberg on the outside, or the inside, I should say, and now he's going to make the pass done to give the lead back to Tyler Landenberg in the number 91 Corvette, I should say. And now, speaking of the 5 Corvette, De La Sala is trying to make a pass back going through turn 3. Does not look like he's going to be able to do so. So, looks like it's going to be a pretty clean and cut pass done by the number 91 back into the lead of the race. Not really sure why he was passed to begin with, but he was nonetheless. And so now he's gotten back into the lead of the race. And you know, this race, it's going to be a long one for these drivers, 2 hours. It's not going to be entirely long if they had raced at Daytona or Sebring, because that race was, again, 2.5 hours. So have to do an hour or a half hour less race in this one than they did have to do in that one. And then back at VIR, it was only a 1 hour and 30-minute race. That one was done pretty clean and cut. They had the smallest field they had all season, but it was still a fantastic race nonetheless. The winner from GT2 is not in this field. I believe we mentioned that at the top of the program. Not in the field of this race. That was going to be Brody Gardner, who won that one in VIR and GT2. Dan Neese leading the way. He's looking for redemption from VIR. He had a bit of an off-track moment. A lot of these prototype drivers had an off-track moment. If you're just joining us, VIR was hectic for these Prototype 2 drivers. The track and the car were not meant to go together, I don't think, and we ended up with a lot of off tracks as these drivers going through the twisty turns of VIR. It's kind of like the Nürburgring, Nordschleife, except really small as far as the dips and rises and sudden elevation changes that you have with the Nordschleife. It was kind of a similar situation at VIR. If you're not familiar with the racetrack, I recommend going and looking up a lap with it. It is something special. These drivers were running the international layout, so it's actually not even the longest layout of that track. There are many ways you can configure that one, and we were running one of the more endurance-friendly circuits, and I don't think you could have put the prototypes on one of the other layouts, but that race led to a lot of prototype offs. This race, it's more or less kind of prototype friendly. This track is really famous for having the American Le Mans Series. The back in the before the merge, it was the Grand Am Series that ran alongside the ALMS, and I believe they raced at this track a couple of times. And I struggle to remember if they had run this track as part of their season regularly or if it was every now and again. I'd have to go back and look at that. I am a little bit unfamiliar with my Grand Am knowledge, but the American Le Mans Series definitely raced here. One of the closest battles in Prototype happened at the end of one of their races, where it was back before we had a lot of the teams choose, well, back before the merger, and then DP kind of took over, and then we have the DPIs, obviously, but back then it was, I believe it was an Orica that was running alongside of, it was something, and I can't quite remember what it was. It was a Muscle Milk Orica that was running alongside something else, and that was one of the closest battles on the race. I believe the Muscle Milk Orica won that race. I'd have to go back and watch the finish of it. It was when the coupes were starting to make their dominance felt, and there was a lot of teams switching over from the open-topped prototypes to the coupes that we see now. I think it's standard that most prototypes, in fact all prototypes that you see coming out nowadays, are the coupes. It just makes a lot of sense when you really get down to it. A lot of aerodynamic advantages, plus it keeps the drivers nice and dry when the rain happens. If you ask a driver how he feels about dry conditions, and he'll say, I love them. I don't think any driver wants to be soaked with rain, as That is Eric Blemmingrantz running on the racetrack. He was in the lead of the race at VAR at one point in time throughout that entire race. I think that all the Prototype 2 drivers took a shot at the lead of that race, and Blemmingrantz was one of them, and he actually had a pretty decent run overall. He finished second and kept his nose clean. That was more or less due to the fact that a lot of the front runners did, in fact, go take themselves out of contention. Nice Witt included. I think Hurley also threw it off the racetrack at one point. But he is actually rebounded and is running in the third position overall in that 21 Miku Hatsune prototype. And I am a bit of a weeb, I'll admit that up front. So when I saw this scheme week 1 at Sebring, my little weeaboo heart kind of went boosh, and I was like, oh, what a scheme, what a driver, what a guy. And yeah, Kevin, he actually got a little bit loose coming down to Canada corner. Speaking of the man himself, Hurley has had a pretty decent season so far. Not won a race yet, but has been consistently running in the top half of the prototype class. And again, running in the top half of the prototype class as well, running third out of 7 prototype drivers, as Mitchell did take the start of the race. So 7 prototypes to take the start of this race. I think that's the most we've had since Daytona. I think Daytona actually had less than that. I think there was only 6 for Daytona, so a total of 7. Sebring had the most drivers overall, as I think we had almost 20 drivers take the start of that race. We have 14 racing at the moment. All 14 are running, including Mitchell, who is now back on racetrack in the throwback livery to the days where Chip Ganassi Racing was in Grand Am. The target scheme on that prototype 2. One of my overall favorite schemes on any car is this target scheme. It's a lot of, as a commentator, it's really fun to watch these guys go around and scheme and just watch the cars and see what they do and how they run. And as a commentator and a motorsports fan in general, this is one of the many pleasures that I have for seeing these races come around. And it's just one of the most favorite pastimes for me. Is I'm going to go back to talk about Caleb Smith, who we never really got the chance to. He had the issue where he went off track as we were speaking about him in that number 10 Buzz Lightyear BMW. He is running third place in class, 9th overall at the moment. Had a bit of an off track earlier in the race, but has since then gathered himself back up and is now not running too terrible, I should say. He's running pretty well. He's got some pace. He's got Hannah coming up right behind him. That might be a battle brewing between these two. Actually, I think Hannah locked up the tires going into turn 5 in the background there. But Caleb Smith is no stranger to the Flatout Racing Network. He has been a part of not just this, but the Slipstream Formula 1 Championship that runs on the Flatout Racing Network on Monday nights. He drives for Racing Point. Actually, no, scratch that. He does not drive for Racing Point. He drives for Mercedes at this point in time. He used to drive for Racing Point at the beginning of the season. Now he drives for the Mercedes Formula 1 team. He has had some ups and downs that season. This is the first time we've seen him make a start in the ALMS for the USRA. So running very well. I do think that the Mercedes team is kind of looking at him saying, or scoffing at him for running in a BMW, but that is what Mercedes get for not having a GT2 class specific Mercedes for him to run in, as he is now in another German powerhouse. The BMWs, he got a little loose. Very, very unhappy that car was going through the final turn, final section of the racetrack. But the BMWs have made starts. They have not made consistent starts for the same team or the same driver, as this is, I believe, the second time that we've seen a BMW come into the race. We saw one last week at VIR. Kind of went out of the race a little bit early on, out of contention, really, from the win of that race, and fell all the way down the order. I believe he finished outside class, a couple places outside class to some GT3s. Now we have one running now. It's Caleb Smith. He's running very well in that number 10. We should see him do well. And if you want to see more of Caleb Smith, you can go over and watch Slipstream Formula 1. We are in the second half of the season. and it is heating up for the Constructors' Championship. The overall championship, the Drivers' Championship, has been more or less locked away by Bronson Stafford at this point, but either way, it's a nice time to go watch some Formula One racing, as the Constructors' Championship is still very much wide open. It's now actually creeping up to be a battle between two of the powerhouses in that particular series. Let's go take a look at Justin Erb, who has got himself righted after the incident that he had earlier where he went off track, got into the back of Witt. He's actually gotten back going the right direction, and that's an Acura. This has been one of those races where, again, he had good luck going into the start, was running well, and has fallen back a bit to the rest of the field, although it's still a long way to go. Have an hour and 23 minutes still left to go in the race, so plenty of time to make up those positions. And like we saw at VIR, really, you do have plenty of time. You can make up a lot of spots in even an hour and a half's time, and this one being 30 extra minutes, you should see him make up some progress. Speaking of progress, up at front, Kevin Hurley going through the carousel is off the track. He was trying to go around, I believe that was Travis Stevens in the GT3 machine. He's actually now fallen back, so that is an off track for Hurley. That is a position gain for Erb. We were talking about how never give up. It's an endurance race. You don't ever give up in these endurance races. You can always end up with a finish that you weren't expecting, and now Erb is made up one of his positions back, now sets his sights on Witt, but he is 23 seconds up the road from Witt, or Witt is 23 seconds up the road from Erb, so a long way to go in this race, but doable. Erb is about 3.5 back to the leader, but Kevin Hurley has been another one of those drivers this season that has made good progress with his racecraft. Not really had a win or was in a position to take a win out part of VIR, was one of those places, again, that he could have had the win, but he too had issues. He's going around the GT3 leader at the moment. That Kevin Hurley at Sebring had a great run. I believe finished top 3 in that race for the prototypes, and then we went to Daytona. Again, a solid run there. VIR was painful for a lot of these drivers, so he's trying to erase that from his memory. But now we're at race number 4, and doing well, as he is up in the 4th place position. He's trying to regain that loss. He's actually kind of overcooked it going into turn 5, but he's gotten back going under the Corvette bridge at the moment. And he's going to try and regain that spot that he lost to Erb. He's got a clean racetrack in front of him because he hasn't. There's a long way up to the GT2s at this stage, so plenty of time to make up the ground there. GT3 consists of only 2 drivers for the first time ever this season. Normally, this is the class that we see the most drivers wholesale every week making the race, although this time it's a bit different, as we have Warren Keith, the president of the USRA American Le Mans Series, leading the way in GT3. He's actually got a pretty decent gap back to Travis Stevens in the Mercedes, running about 3.5 up from the 24, and he's running consistently. This is the first start he's made this season has Keith. He has made that Audi shine. That is one of the nicest looking Audis on the field, one of the nicest looking cars on the field. Again, being a bit of an Audi fanboy, I do enjoy watching the Audis run around the track, and the R8 doing well tonight as he is running 11th overall, first in class. He's actually ahead of one of the prototypes, that being Mitchell, who is still trying to regain, I believe, he's 4 laps down to the GT3, so he's got a bit of a way to go before he passes them on the racetrack for what would be a 11th place at that moment. Prototype in the pits, that is Justin Erb. All the prototypes are in the pits, really. There comes Nice, your leader at the moment, was out. Erb is out, and now Hurley is in, getting their service done. That gives the lead of the race over to Witt temporarily, as that driver will be coming around now, going on to the run into Canada corner. We should see him on pit road momentarily, and this was kind of expected from the prototype drivers. They had to make their stops earlier than the GT drivers do, if you're just joining us. And if this is the first time you've seen a endurance race, a multi-class endurance race, then all these cars are a little bit different from each other. None of them are the same as far as power outputs go. About the only thing that's similar between these drivers and these cars is that the rear wheels are what makes the car go. Aside from that, these are a mixed bag of different power outputs and aerodynamics. Is now the leader of Prototype 2 and overall leaders on pit road. The prototypes are about the only car you can get because they are all the same car, that they are about as stock as you can get. Well, I say stock, I mean in the sense that they are all the same type of car. Speaking of, those are the GTs into the pits. That's Landenberg and De La Sala. I don't know why they're in the pit road at the moment. GTs don't have to pit for a while, but both of the Corvettes find themselves on pit road. There goes Landenberg, done with his stop, and there goes De La Sala, done with his stop. So now those two drivers will be making their way back onto the racing surface. That might mean we'll see Caleb Smith come down pit road in a couple of laps' time. Not entirely sure if those Corvettes meant to pit that early, because it's documented throughout the series that they can go at least 20 minutes, sometimes longer than these prototypes, although that early race full course yellow kind of threw some monkey wrench into these drivers' plans, I'm sure of it. As we have a theme in this race, or this series I should say, where there's always a safety car in the first couple of laps, if not the opening lap of the race. Think back all the way to Sebring. It was Justin Erb actually that started the race facing the wrong direction in turn number 3, spinning off the nose of one of the other prototype drivers. And in Daytona, it was a pileup in turn number 1 of the GTs, actually, was what caused that one. And then you expected that kind of thing to happen to VIR just because of the nature of the racetrack, and almost immediately there was a bit of a issue into turn 1, but they managed to get away with that. No harm, no foul. As now in this race, we're not sure what happened in this one, as we cannot really go back and see what it was, but there was a safety car that came out in the first lap of the race, and I have a feeling it involved probably that driver there, that being Mitchell. I have a feeling it was involving him. Although Mitchell, the reason why he's back this far is because he locked up going into turn 1 on the restart and went off course. So Caleb Smith does not pit this time by, nor does Noel Hanna. So that gives me some insight. I don't think that was a scheduled stop for either Landenberg nor De La Sala. De La Sala is in the middle of a big hornet's nest of prototypes. Denise has retaken the lead. Erb is now back into 3rd place. That is Frazier, Samuel Frazier. We haven't talked much about Samuel Frazier. He is running. Don't adjust your TV set. That is the 6th place position in the Prototype 2 class. He is running a solid race, albeit a lap down to the entire class. This car not showing significant pace here. He had really good pace at Sebring. Was one of the front runners pretty much the whole race at Sebring. Towards the end of the race, kind of fell back just a bit. And then at Daytona, it was more or less a similar thing, where he was a dominant car in the top half of the field, and then kind of fell back towards the end of the race. Not a good long run machine, although I think some of that wasn't due to his fault. That might have been due to some other things on track that made him use up his stuff a little bit earlier than he wanted to, as he's trying to get around Landenberg for not a position, but just slower traffic. As again, if you are not familiar with GT racing or endurance, multi-class endurance racing, there are 3 races going on at the track at the same time, and today we have 3 of those races going on at the track at the same time, those being Prototype 2, GT2, and GT3. If you're wondering why 2, not 1, that is the class-specific car that fits into the class overall, as per either the FIA or other sources or other disciplines in the series that deem them to be that class. And P2 stands for Prototype 2, and that means that they all fit in the Prototype 2 class no matter where they are run. That was Frazier almost going off track. There is P1, which are more or less factory teams, as you would expect. Factory teams that they make uh, their own machine. They make their own engines. Usually, they make their own bodies. They make pretty much all the car. These cars are Delaras, and if you're familiar with the name Delara, they make a lot of chassis for a lot of cars, including IndyCar. I think they make the chassis for IndyCar still. So Delara makes this prototype chassis, which a team can buy and then put their own engines in them. I don't think everyone's running the same engine in this particular class, but you can run different engines. Acura is running in this one. This would be an Acura engine. Some of these other teams will opt for other types. You can get Cosworth, you can get Honda, you can get a plethora of cars to put in there. Kind of like DPI. DPI is kind of prototype 1, if you want to be a little technical. It's not as quickly as prototype 1, but not as slow as prototype 2, we'll put it that way, as it is kind of a class all of its own. That's why it cannot race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It does not fit in any of the classes there. It doesn't meet regulations, so unfortunately we haven't ever going to see a DPI in the Le Mans 24, but we will get to see the Daytona Hypercar, because I believe they're going to fit within the regulations of the overall rule changes that are happening in the world of endurance racing, that being the Hypercar coming in. We've talked a lot about the Hypercar that's going to be coming into prototype racing, or into endurance racing as a whole, and it's kind of replacing the P2, P1s that we've been seeing for the last 20 years or so. It's giving other manufacturers an opportunity to show what they can do. It's going to be more or less their cars that you can actually buy. So it's going to be more or less like a GT series or a GT class, but much quicker than all the normal GTs. Or think about GT1. If you know what a GT1 spec car is, think about that. But if you put a prototype 1 engine inside of it and then give it all a bunch of fancy aerodynamics and such, that's basically what a hypercar is going to be for the next era of endurance racing. It's going to be pretty interesting to watch, and I'm actually excited to see it when it gets put into full effect. We were supposed to see it this year for the 24, I believe. I think it might have still been next year. Certainly Daytona next year. We were going to see it in the World Endurance Series this year, but we have other situations that have taken precedence, so the entire rulebook got moved back by 1 year, as well as a lot of other disciplines in racing. Formula One also got their new car moved back till 2022 rather than 2021, so gives the teams more time to work on those respective cars and such and such. The battle for GT3 is going to be as follows. Keith and Stevens are going to be the only two, but they are really close to each other. Closest overall battle on the racetrack at the moment, and that is within a second of each other. The Mercedes of Stevens has been closing in on the Audi ever so slightly, actually making up about a tenth per lap, actually a little bit more now. He's put the jets on. He's catching up to the GT3 leader very quickly. Is something that I didn't really expect him to do, honestly. It looked like that the Audi was one of the fastest of the cars on the racetrack as a whole when you consider pace and the different classes. Now kind of falling back a little bit into the clutches of this Mercedes team. Stevens has made, I think, every race except... No, he has. He's made every race so far this season, except for VIR. I should correct myself. I don't think he made VIR. If he did, then... yeah, he did. He made VIR. Looking back at my thing, he did VIR. Running in the second place position overall, or second place position in class. This is the only two GT3s on the track at the moment, and we're still getting a really good battle for the race lead. I should point that out first and foremost. This is a GT never seems to fail. I love GT racing. I love the GT3s. I love the GT2s. I love all the GTs when it comes to that class, and it's really fun to be doing this while also having the 24 hours of Spa going on, as well as you get your GT fix all across the board. And and running well are these two. The battle is going to be heating up soon. We're going to keep an eye on this for a little while. Not particularly at the moment, though. It seems that they have been running pretty consistently over the course of the last few laps. And we're going to go up and take a look at some of our GT2 drivers and where they are mired at the moment, as it looks to me that Landenberg is closing back in on Caleb Smith. Now, Landenberg had pulled a pretty good gap back to Smith and De La Sala. Well, both De La Sala and Landenberg had pulled a pretty good gap back to Smith before these two came down pit road. Not really sure why they came to pit road so early, as Smith has stayed out considerably longer, about the length that I expected the GT2s to stay out as he stayed out, but he has ran pretty well. He's catching up. He's about 27 seconds back to Smith, so should see him catching up quite speedily, as De La Sala is still running about 3 seconds behind, but both lead Corvettes, I should say, running very well still. The Corvettes have dominated the GT2 class all season long. It has been nothing but these two that have been running, well, this car specifically that has been dominated at Sebring. Didn't quite dominate as much as they did at Sebring at Daytona, but they were still a pretty good force to be reckoned with at Daytona. The Porsches did have something for them, but could not have mustered up much of anything. And then at VIR, it was more or less the same. The Corvettes were dominant. The one Porsche, I believe, that did make the field, there were actually no Porsches that made the field that race. We did have the Ford GT of Loveridge make the start, but did not do anything with that Ford GT. We also saw a BMW come into the field that did not do much of anything else, so the Corvettes did most of the work there for GT2. So far now, it is Caleb Smith in GT2 leading the way in the BMW at the moment, but that will change once the cycle of stops come around. They're going to have a pretty decent lead over this BMW at the moment. Although being off sequence like that, you would expect them to maybe be a little bit weird when it comes to pit stops later on in the race. But you have to keep an eye on that to see if they can indeed do something with that. Being off sequence to the rest of the GT2s, as he has not made any indication to come to pit road at the moment. He's actually being asked by the prototype of Hurley, which is still trying to make up ground going forward towards the third place position in prototype 2. I don't know why I said prototype that way. It's a bit late here on the East Coast. It's about 10 p.m. Eastern time and we are getting into the late hours of the night. We are getting into the wee hours of the morning in Europe, as evidenced by the 24 hours of Spa that I have in the background as well. Now that is a bit of an interesting scenario, and I don't think that I've seen a race like this take place, but something interesting happened during the 24 hours of Spa. It's daylight savings time in Europe at the moment, and they were racing tonight, and they, because of that, went back an hour. When the clock struck 2 in the morning, they went back an hour to 2 in the morning again. When the clock struck 3 in the morning, it went back to 2 in the morning. So I'm not really quite sure how that works. I believe that is what happened. I hadn't devoted myself to full attention at that moment in time. But everyone on Europe's time zone is now only 4 hours ahead of the Eastern time zone in the US if you're in the UK, and 5 if you are in the EU. So welcome to being an hour closer to us. So you get to perhaps enjoy this race while also enjoying that race over there. Speaking of things of that nature, the 24 Hours of Spa is doing very well at the moment. As again, I don't think that Ferrari is leading in the Pro-Am at the moment. I'd have to go and look at that again. I know that it's been about an hour since that lead took place, and a lot can happen in an hour. Not sure who the overall leader is at the moment either. Kind of have it in the background, not really paying much attention to it as I am focused on this race instead of that one solely. We still running around this track, getting our bearings for the next hour of the race. Here at Road America, we're about an hour and 4 minutes away from the end of the race, and the first half has been about everything that we expected out of the USRA ALMS. It's been one of the races that has kind of had a similar feel to the others, as we had a safety car early on, and then that set up for a long run towards the finish. And if everything goes well, this should be the way that we run to the finish of the race. No one is having major offs that we saw at VIR. They're all having a good, sensible race at this track. I said it earlier in the program, but this track a bit more sensibly sized for these cars, as they can really stretch their legs and show what they can do. So the mindset now, getting into the second half of the race, is that now you've come this far along, the prototypes have to make at least 2 more stops. At least 1 more stop. I don't think they can do it I don't think they quite need to do 3 stops. I think they can do it in just another stop to go. So they came with about 40 minutes into the race. So add 40 minutes to that. That should be an hour and 20. That might be pushing it. They can do it if they save some fuel and such, but that a lot of those laps are run under the safety car, so we really don't have a good gauge on that. So they might have to come in 2 more times rather than just 1. And well, I have to say, speaking of, I just looked down there. The battle for GT3 has heated up. I haven't really been looking at that relative, and I missed the pass for the lead. So apologies there, but Warren Keith has gotten passed by Stevens. This is a battle for the GT3 lead, the only 2 drivers in GT3 at the moment, and they're dogfighting in turn number 5. It looks like that Keith is going to get it way down to the inside. He's actually going to slow the car down, and is right in front of Herb, who we're going to talk about in a couple of moments, but he is now finding himself trying to get around these 2, and they've been showing the blue flags, but they don't really need to pass them at this moment in time. Really, these drivers don't get blue flags in the sense that we see them in other series, because they're not being challenged for position, but they still are running in their own race. So the prototypes just have to try and find a way around these drivers, more or less. They can't really make much in the way of having them get out of the way. The prototypes just have to kind of figure it out as they go along. But now the lead is back to Keith as he made the pass down to turn 5 and never looked back, is pulling a bit of a gap again. Stevens is now going to try and run him back down, and now we have one of the prototypes, Frazier, coming through. That is the 6th place prototype coming through these 2 drivers and setting himself up to get around, and he does so. Keith is, again, he is the president of the USRA American Le Mans Series. He is doing double duty tonight as being the president and a driver, doing a fantastic job, I might add, as he's leading the way. The sun is beginning to fall behind the hills here in Wisconsin. It is getting into some very dark hours in a few moments' time. This track going to be flooded with darkness in, I'd say, but by the end of the race, we should see complete darkness on the racetrack. The only fully day race that we've had so far this season has been Daytona. Every other race has either seen a day to night or a night to day. In the case of Sebring, where we started it early morning and went into early morning, as we are approaching race 4, about halfway through race 4 on this 10 race season. So as we get to halfway, 1 hour to go in the race, we are going to take another quick FRN side-by-side. You won't miss anything as we will go side-by-side. Sound and Vision here on the Flatout Racing Network. Thank you for watching this far. We'll hope to see you in the second half of the race, but until then, have a word from our sponsors. second half of the race has commenced, and the leader in GT2 is on pit road, getting his service done here at Road America. My name is Anthony Curry. Again, thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, it's been a long road to get here. It's been about an hour and 4 minutes rather into the race. Something that I noticed also is that is De La Sala, who has made a pit stop. I think he might have teleported to pit road, so we'll have to quickly see what happened to him as we have a moment where we can go back and take a look at what happened to the number 5 of De Sala, as he was running pretty well, but something has gone terribly wrong for that Corvette team. So hope to see if we can get something to show you on our screens to see why he is on the pit road. And oh, I think we know what happened. I think he's gotten wedged. We'll have to go to live, as here we are. This is what happened to De La Sala. I think he was trying to go into pit road, and then he had a bit of a moment where he didn't want to, and he actually wedged it into the barrier going on the front straightaway. He actually got stuck, couldn't get out, so then he had to teleport to pit road. So tough break for the Corvette team, who was running very well, running in second place in class at the time. So now he's going to be fallen very far behind the pace of the field. Is a tough break for that team, as they had such a high hopes coming into this race, couldn't quite make anything of it. So have to keep an eye and see if he can make anything else happen of tonight, as we're looking now at Dan Neese's progress in the 14, and the lead of the Prototype 2 has gone back to Tyler Landenberg, who has inherited it off of Caleb Smith pitting. Now, Landenberg is on a much different pit strategy than Smith is. We'll have to see what Smith can do in order to make sure he's in the position. Oh, there was a car that went off track. I think that was Frazier that went off track there. Yeah, that was right behind Landenberg, who's made his way back onto the racetrack. Frazier's had a lot of struggles all race long, now going through the carousel. He's still having struggles. Look how much he's turning the wheel in the cockpit. He's off track again outside the carousel. There's something very wrong with that machine. Shaking it side to side, getting the gravel off the tires, as there's no grip in those tires at the moment. Running 6 overall, running 6 in class as well, as Mitchell is still trying to find his way back around the racetrack to get around the GT3 traffic, as an off-track moment for Frazier is what sets him now in the clutches of going down another lap to, that would be Kevin Hurley, who finds himself in 5th place. Something has gone amiss on the Kevin Hurley machine, as he has fallen back. He was running in the 4th place position. Now Blumengrantz is gotten around him, as these two are about ready to catch the the GT2 leaders. Ooh, on the racetrack now, rejoins is De La Sala, who is coming back on. He's now going around these drivers. He's going to get out of the way of the prototypes, and now is going through turn number 3. Is these prototypes now going down the run down into turn 5. Drivers trying to get around the leader in GT2, that being Landenberg. The daylight is fading, and fading quickly, as we see the headlights starting to form light patterns on the racing surface, which is bringing good news and some unfortunate news to some of these drivers. Some of these drivers may not be accustomed to running at the nighttime hours at Road America. We'll have to see how they do. But good news for the drivers who are, and good news for us at home who like watching cars run around the track at night. This is going to give us an opportunity to watch some nighttime racing, as we haven't seen this since we were at Sebring. It was the first time, or was the last time we saw complete darkness for some time of the race, because we did see some darkness, but that was at the very end of the race, so we only got maybe 5 good minutes of total darkness, and there was still just a little glimmer of sunlight in the air. And now we're gonna take a look here, see if we can go back to the GT3 battle, as the battle is kind of spread out a bit to about a second, as actually, where is Stevens? Oh, Stevens is on pit road. Okay, so Stevens on pit road. That's not right. This is what's right. Okay, so that was my mistake. We were watching things in the past, now we're watching things in the present. So, my mistake there. That is Stevens now back up to the back end of Keith, as my relative was telling me things that the images weren't. So, my apologies there, as we got to see some battles that happened in the past. Landenberg is still now coming into the pits. So this is what I was talking about. Landenberg on that off strategy is going to come out into the pits. Now, this sets him in a position where he can go the rest of the race now without having to stop again. That being said, because Caleb Smith made his stop at the halfway point, that means that he probably will be able to make it all the way to the end of the race without having to stop again. So, Landenberg is going to have to make up all the time he needs to on Smith on the racetrack. There is an opportunity. He can do it. There's no question about that. He can do it. It's just going to be a matter of him hustling throughout the rest of the race. There's 15 minutes to go in the race, and a lot of this is going to be run at night. He's also going to hope that maybe Caleb Smith is not as good at driving at night as he is during the day. See if his pace slows down any at all through the dark hours and be able to make up some positions. It's going to be a fuel-only stop for the number 10 Corvette coming back onto the racetrack. I don't think that would have been for a penalty that he had to serve. I think that was a fuel stop for the number 91 team, so he is now back on the racetrack and back in the lead of the race. He's actually lost some time to Caleb Smith. That'll be about a 10-second gap now back to the BMW of Smith, who is coming down into turn 3 at the moment. So that puts him in that position, and that puts him in a pretty good spot for the rest of the race. He can just kind of run around the racetrack at this point in time, and with the misfortune of De La Sala, he doesn't have anything to worry about as far as being challenged for the second place position at this moment, as both De La Sala and Hanna have not had the best of runs, as he pulls off to the side of the track to let the prototypes go. A veteran move on the part of Caleb Smith, not really battling for position, not really threatened by another car for position, so going to have to pull off to the side of the road as I go around Stevens in the GT3, who has fallen back to Warren Keith. It's now about a 3-second gap back to the GT3 leader of Warren Keith, who is going through the carousel now and getting passed by our second place driver in Prototype 2. That'd be Alex Witt. Going forward in the season, this is race number 4 of 10 in this season for the USRA, American Le Mans Series. The next couple of races we have here is I'm going to look here and see where they are. There they are. So, the next few races that we have going forward are as follows. We have Indianapolis next time out. That will be a 1.5-hour race. Then we have the Charlotte Road Course. That will be GT cars only. That will be a 2 hours and 20-minute race. Then we have Watkins Glen, a 2-hour race. Mid-Ohio, a 1.5-hour race. Laguna Seca and Petit Le Mans, which will be at Road Atlanta. Laguna Seca, a 2-hour race, and Road Atlanta, a 2.5-hour race, 2.5-hour race for these drivers running through. And we're going to take a look here. Justin Erb running there, and Alex Witt. I'm looking at, I thought I saw something on the relative that looked a little bit off, but that must have just been the relative being off and not actually showing what was relative on the racetrack. But now, as we go back up to the leader, Dan Neese running very well in that machine, and running very well overall in the pace, as he's kept a good one so far to Alex Witt. He is about 12 seconds now clear of Witt. This is stark contrast that we saw a week ago, and I think this is much needed on the part of Dan Neitz, as he was really hoping for something that he could really use to his advantage to get back in the swing of things. He's won 2 races this season. The first race he lost was VIR. So he's looking to get back into the winner's circle, looking to get back into the swing of things. He's actually going to come into the pits. So this is going to be a scheduled stop for the prototype leader, as the second round of prototype stops has kicked off. So at this point in time, I would imagine that he can make it to the end of the race at this stage of the race. We are going to see, I think he can do it. It's going to be close if he can't. I'll put it that way. I think these drivers came in about 45-ish minutes at the first round. So we should see him maybe save a little bit. He could maybe go to the end of the race. Alex Witt is going to inherit the interim lead in prototype at the moment. Lemongrass, as we saw on our screen a moment ago, is actually a bit of a straightaway back. He's gotten around Landenberg for that position and now running in a 4th place position, which is more than enough for this driver, given the fact that he finished 2nd last week, which is valuable in the point standings for him going through the prototype points. So valuable points for him, as Landenberg had a bit of an off back there in turn 5, but this is valuable for him as far as points go, as he has had these kind of consistent runs that we've seen him have throughout the entire season, but not really in a position per se to be battling for the overall lead at the moment. But if he gets these consistent finishes, and if something happens to, say, Nice or someone else running higher than him in the standings, that he could very much be in a battle for the points lead in the championship by the time we get to Road Atlanta, as we still have a long way to go. That one happening in January of 2021, so we have a long way to go for that this championship, as it is still late October, coming up on Halloween next week. We are going to be having a race on Halloween next week as well. It's going to be their Halloween special, and I believe that is the race that's going to be in Indianapolis. I don't know if that's going to be on the Flatout Racing Network. We'll have to take a quick word with Warren Keith to see if that is going to be on the Flatout Racing Network, but you can rest assured that I think that is going to be broadcast somewhere, so just stay tuned from the USRA to find out where that is. And is that Dan Neitz? That is not Dan Neitz, that is Alex Witt. That's going to be on the pit road. It looked like Dan Neitz, I don't know why he would have been pitting twice. So he is going to make his final stop, what should be his final stop of the race as well, for these prototype drivers, as the sun starts to fade further and further away, as the lights now illuminating the sides of the track walls and the grass areas. As there's something pretty special about watching cars run around at night, especially sports car racing at night. It's a completely different world. You get the sights, the sounds, the lights flickering, them going around the track and illuminating the area, just the track environment. It's something special, and if you haven't seen a 24-hour race before, then I recommend you go watch the 24 Hours of Spa. That's actually happening right now, so you can get a feel for it. It's a little bit different this year for Spa as it was last year, obviously due to the ongoing situation throughout the world right now. It's a little bit difficult to have people at events, but if you go back and watch the 2019 edition, you'll see all the lights, the campsites, the Ferris wheels, everything around the racetrack that we normally get to see, and I don't think there's anything quite like it in motorsport, and that is something I think that is special. Now, something that has occurred is Dan Neitz had a horrifically slow stop last time out. He had a 51-second stop. Alex Witt has just made a 32-second stop. He has jumped essentially 20 seconds on Dan Neitz. So not only has he made up all that time he was down to the leader Neitz, he has now jumped ahead by 7 seconds as the new leader of the Prototype 2 class. This is important because I don't think he took tires. I think that he went without tires, so that means that he's on slower tires. I don't think that he is necessarily slower paced, But this is some strategy, knowing that this is the last time to have to stop. Maybe he thinks that he can run away from Nice on all-out power rather than with fresh tires. He is slower. He is losing some time. That might be because he was trying to get around the slower car of Keith, but he has made that pass done. It's actually about 6 seconds now back to Danny, so he just lost a second on that exchange. So Nice is actually much quicker than Witt at the moment. We'll have to see if throughout the race, he's still 40 minutes to go in the race, so there's still plenty of time to make up that spot later in this race, is that you're still going to have quite a bit of time to work with. And I would imagine by the end of this stint, this being the final stint for these prototype drivers, I would imagine that Nice would make up that gap. He's actually almost made up another second back to Witt. So Witt is struggling on those older tires, as Nice setting himself up for potentially the longest run that they're going to see as far as Pitt's strategy goes. Is I don't think that they are particularly in a spot where they can make it all the way. Given that they pitted last with about 40 minutes in the race, and now they've pitted again with over 40 minutes to go, it's going to be close for these prototype drivers if they can make it the rest of the way. The GT drivers are pretty much all cut and clean, as Tyler Landenberg has made a stop that was putting him in a position that he can go the rest of the way. Caleb Smith is also good to go the rest of the way. He's made his only stop, which was beyond halfway, so should be good to go on fuel for the remainder of this event. And De La Sala has made his way back on the racetrack and has actually made a position back. He's actually passed Noel Hanna for the third place position in GT. He was leading GT2 at one point in a battle with Landenberg, but now has fallen back to third after binning it in the exit of the final turn on the front straightaway. Still running pretty well here. Noel Hanna running extremely well at the moment in the 7th place position. I'm sorry, that's the 7 car running in the 4th place position. I looked at the 7 on the side and said, yeah, that's the position he's running in. Not quite, Anthony. That's not where he is running in that Corvette. Warren Keith is leading the race in GT3. He's actually got about a 5-second gap to Travis Stevens, who is just trying to finish out the day strong. He's going to get a 2nd place finish regardless, as Scott Rankin has gone out of the race and now is going to be quite a ways back as far as points go. Daniel Mitchell should say that he is the last car running on the racetrack. He is running 12th place overall. Just look here, Frazier has gone out of the race, so I think he might have retired the car, did Samuel Frazier. He didn't have, unless he had another off somewhere, then we didn't see it. I didn't see anything around the track during the last couple of rotations around the relative here, so I don't think that was the case. I think he might have just decided to retire the cars. He was 3 laps behind the leaders in prototype. Daniel Mitchell, who bended in turn 1 on the 2nd, I believe that was the 3rd lap of the race. We're on 41 laps at the moment that these drivers have turned. Daniel Mitchell still running on the racetrack. He's got positions he can make up, which are going to be crucial for the overall standings, as he can at least pass the GT3s with relative ease, as he's 2 laps behind them. The GT3s and the GT2s are on the same lap, although just barely on the same lap, as Keith is about a minute behind Hanna. So all the GTs are running on the same lap, although by just the slimmest of margins. Alex Witt is continuing to lose time. He is about 2 seconds before he is caught by Dan Nice for the lead of the race yet again. Those older tires really proving to not be as quick as he'd like them to be. Maybe thinking that I can get the track position and then maybe hold off Dan Nice, but Nice is going to be much quicker than him on new tires. That being said, we're going to quickly take another commercial break in a few moments' time. We're going to see how this develops first. We're going to see how this battle for the prototype 2 lead and the overall lead develops. Yeah, it's actually down to about a second now as Nice is closing in on the 94 machine. So we'll stay here until the pass is made during this battle, and then we will go back for another commercial break. Around 30 minutes to go, I think, is about where we'll find ourselves at that point in time, as Nice is trying to catch up a little bit. He's making the progress that he needs to. Again, he's on the fresher tires. He had a much longer stop. That's why Witt was so far ahead of Nice after that last round of stops, is because he only took fuel, and that saved him 20 seconds just by doing that, and was able to make up that time and then make up some more time to Nice. But now Nice is looking very strong coming up the front straightaway. Actually, within a second now, about down to half a second, we should see, maybe not into turn 1 or 3, but definitely down into turn 5, we should see this battle for the lead really hit its stride. It's going through turn 1 at the moment. Not close enough for Nice to make a run into 2, but will set himself up for the run down into turn number 5. He's going to be on power as quickly as he can. He's going to have the draft now from the 94 going down into turn 5. Does he make a move at this stage? Not quite close enough is that 14 machine, as the rest of the racetrack is made up of a lot of passing zones that you can make up sometime, as we're going through now 6 and 7 as this complex of lefts and rights, as a left and a right, as we're actually catching up to a GT. That might be Hana that they're catching up, and that's going to throw a monkey wrench, as they're going to catch him in the carousel. And we've seen a lot of the prototypes go off track at the carousel before. This might be another time that we'll see a driver go off here, as your guy's just coming out of the carousel now down the run into Canada Corner. The run down towards Canada Corner actually slowed up Nice through that exchange, as he got away from the lead of the races. Now it's going to be Witt pulling away yet again, as Nice is trying to catch up yet again, is running almost identical lines through Canada Corner going up to the final section of the racetrack. These left, and then right. Very fast complex. If you've got your car set up right, you can go through there flat out coming out of Canada Corner, and then through the final turn going up the hill. It's going to be a nice long run down into turn 1. Can Nice set up a run? That's the thing that we have seen him do. He's been able to get right back to the back end of Witt, but then kind of stalls out there. These aerodynamic dependent cars, once they get into dirty air, it makes it really difficult to trail somebody unless your setup is just that much better than the guy in front. And that's, I think, what Witt is kind of hoping, is that Nice has got a setup that isn't really good when trailing, but looks like now closest that he's been so far is now Nice to the inside of Witt going down into 5. What can he do on the brakes? Looks like he's going to get slowed down in enough time. Easily done. That will be the lead of the race, going back to Dan Nice in the 14. Fantastic move down to 5. We've seen a lot of drivers do the dive bomb into 5, and Nice was able to really put the brakes on there. A very beautiful run down to 5, and now he's got plenty of room in front to stretch his legs and show what this 14 machine can do. With about 33 and a half minutes to go in the race. We're going to take a quick side-by-side yet again. Sound and vision on the Flatout Racing Network is what we're doing, but even the vision part needs a little bit of a break. The sound part, I should say, needs a bit of a break, as we're going to go side-by-side yet again until well, we'll see what happens, as this will be our final side-by-side until the end of the race. We'll come back to you very shortly, but until then, we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back, everyone, to the USRA American Le Mans Series on the Flatout Racing Network, here live from Road America for the 2 hours of Road America. It's been a long way to go for these drivers. We're about just under a half hour to go in the race, 29 minutes, 20 seconds to go in the race, as it's been an action-packed filled race, but it's been more of a proper endurance race for a lot of these drivers. A little bit of a contrast that we saw from last week, as that was more or less just a knockdown, drag-out sprint race that we've seen from a couple of races in other series. My name is Anthony McCurry. If you haven't, or if you're just coming in from later on in the evening, or if you're just joining us from wherever you are, I'd like to extend a good morning to some of our Australian fans, who I know that we have some, and I think we have a couple that maybe run in this series. So I want to extend a good morning to you guys over in Australia, and I hope that you're having a good Sunday so far. It's getting late over here on the east coast of the U.S., and it's very early in the morning over in Europe, as they're in daylight saving at the moment. So it's still very early morning. They have about an hour's extra sleep tonight that they did not have. And I've always been a fan of the daylight savings when they come in the fall, as that extra sleep really does make a difference for you. And man, if you haven't experienced a good extra hour of sleep, then outside of the daylight savings, then if you ever have if you work somewhere and you have your boss call you and say, hey, come in an hour early, you get that extra hour of sleep, it really does wonders for you. I will guarantee it. So I wouldn't recommend doing this if you are in a crucial spot, but if you have the chance, sleep an extra hour. See how it does for you. Anyway, Dan Neese leading the way still in Prototype 2 and overall. He has been up there not since the onset. He has had to battle for it a couple of times. He was battling with Alex Witt for a little while. Witt was in the lead for a few, and then Justin Erb has also been in the lead of this race at one point in time, but he has fallen back into the third place position overall and in prototypes. And that would be the number 23 Acura car, which is running pretty far back from Dan Neese, actually about a half a lap behind the overall leader at this moment in time. He's actually not far along from being lapped. He's about 40-ish seconds, maybe less than that. That's the gap, I should say, about 40-ish seconds from being lapped by our leader. Neese has had the overall pace tonight, no doubt about it, as he's actually pulling away from Witt now. Witt is on much older tires, though. He came down pit road, tried a bit of strategy where he didn't change any tires at all, and then was able to get the lead, but the pace has just not been there on the older rubber for the 94 car, so not a whole lot going on there for him in his world, but he is still running second place, which is something to be said, given the way that this race could have turned out otherwise. A fantastic showing for that driver. That would be Landenberg that we're on board with at the moment. He is running first place in GT2, has basically been there the whole way. He's been on a interesting strategy for these GT drivers. Both him and De La Sala came down on pretty much the same lap, much earlier than the GTs usually come down, I should add. Caleb Smith stayed out about 20 minutes after they came down and made their first stop. So a very different strategy. That made an extra stop. However, that has not affected where he is running. He is in the lead of the race, a firm lead in the race, about a 15-second lead in the lead of the race, back to the aforementioned Smith, who is running very well. His first start in the ALMS, and he is using a car that doesn't get used much in the ALMS, in the BMW M8 GTE, running very well. We should see him carry over this momentum. If he does choose to race the next few races, there's some good racing coming up for these drivers, that being at Indianapolis and the Charlotte Road Course. I refuse to call it the Roval. I I know I just called it the Roval, but I still, when I'm talking about it, I've had a few people say, "Why don't you call it the Roval?" And I don't like the name Roval. I think I know it's kind of its own thing, and they're trying to be their own track, but to me, it just seems like a gimmick. I don't know why they call it the Roval, but I personally don't like the name Roval, but that doesn't mean that it's not a bad name. I just personally don't like it. The Charlotte Road Course is a stop on these drivers' itinerary very soon, and that will be 2 weeks' time when they go to the Charlotte Road Course. And they have done a lot of work to the Charlotte Road Course in iRacing. It is a fantastic drive. The name, again, to me, I don't particularly care for it. It's not a horrible name. I just don't particularly care for it. I don't want to get that misconstrued. The track is fantastic. The track is lovely. I enjoy running on the Roval. I enjoy running around that track. It's a unique layout in the sense that it feels like Daytona, but it's small, and it's a classic track. When you think of the Charlotte Road Course, you don't think. I mean, a lot of new fans will think that the track is new and a new idea. It's actually not. The original road course at Charlotte was the same layout, a lot less modern than it is now, but the same layout, and was, one of the premier stops on the Can-Am series. And they ran that track for a good while throughout the late 60s, 70s, and then even in the 80s they ran that racetrack. And it was beautiful then. They kind of abandoned it for a little while. They didn't really have a whole lot of events there, if any at all. They kind of left it up for parking and camping for a lot of NASCAR races. And they recently decided to reopen it when NASCAR made a bid and said that they wanted to race at that track. So they repaved it, made it look beautiful. It is a stunning racetrack. A bit too small to see perhaps maybe a full-fledged endurance series on. We haven't seen... speaking of endurance, that is the leader in GT3 going off track in the carousel. That's Warren Keith. We've seen a lot of drivers go off track here in the carousel, and he is the latest of those drivers. He had a big lead, though. Had a big lead over Travis Stevens, so nothing really to lose here. I think Stevens has had enough. He's got wing damage. Something has happened to Stevens. He is a lap behind Keith at the moment. So that is incredibly interesting. Didn't really see that. I don't know how far back this happened. We might get a chance to go back and look at it. In fact, let's take a chance. Let's see what happened to the Mercedes driver. We might have to go back a little ways to find this, but we are going to go back nonetheless. Let's see where this might have been. He is a second behind. Not a second, an entire lap behind Warren Keith at the moment. So we're still going back here. If it takes a little too long to find it, we'll see. Okay, there he is on pit road. I know you can't see anything on the screen at the moment, but we are making progress. I think this is the lap that it happened on. Certainly, we're getting close to that point in time. So this was a while back. This was several laps ago. Well, he had a lot more damage than we thought. All right, we have found it. We have found it. So we're going to go back to live. This is what happened later in the race. We're not really sure what time frame this was on, but he gets off track going through 7 and just pounds the wall. He was trying to make progress on Warren Keith, but did not. Oh, that was right in front of Nice too. So this was really significant. This was, you can see just how earlier on it was. Those two, Nice and Witt, were running basically nose to tail at that point. But that's what happened to Travis Stevens. Didn't quite get it right, got off track, and then ended up bending it. But he has made his way back on the racetrack, and he is now a lap down to the other driver in GT3. Warren Keith, who that Audi looks fantastic at night. The number panel even lights up. That's beautiful. I like it when the number panel lights up for these drivers. That's been a more recent thing that's happened in GT racing, and I say recent. It goes all the way back to I think they were doing it even in the late 2000s. So not a recent thing, but certainly has been one of the more recent additions to these cars. I don't know why that they. I mean, technology has come such a long way that they've been able to do that now with these cars, and seeing the LED strips on some of these cars and whatnot, and it's really nice to see. I like seeing sports cars at night. Back to the point about the Charlotte Road Course. That track is a staple in a lot of old time race car fans, and again back to the Can-Am days. But now, ever since the NASCAR decided they want to go on, and they repaved it, and the track is beautiful. Now, I don't think it's quite big enough to, like I said, I don't think it's quite big enough to have a full-fledged 50-car endurance race on. I think it's, well, you could do that. I don't think you could have prototypes though. The track is a bit fast for prototypes, I feel. That said, I don't think the lap time would be much different than. I don't think the lap time would be much different than Road Atlanta. I don't know. That might be something to think about. Might be something to think about for the future. If any of the executives are listening to this broadcast, I would like to put my bid in for a endurance race at not Road Atlanta. There's already one at Road Atlanta, but at the Charlotte Road Course. I think that would be one of the best races that we could get at that track. Is a maybe not a 24-hour race, but we could try maybe a 3-hour race to see how they do. Maybe throw some of the we could bring the full-fledged WeatherTech series to the racetrack and see how they do as a bit of a test bed. I think that would be really cool to see, and see how these prototypes could do on that track. Certainly with the hypercar. I think that once we get into the hypercar era, that might be a little bit more reasonable. With the current prototype, with the DPI era, I don't think that would be legible for the near future. But nice to dream, and we can do it in iRacing. So we're not doing it in this series. It's going to be GT only for this series. It'll be a GT only event for this series, but that might not be for long. Maybe they go into a season 2. Maybe we'll put in a bid to have prototypes there as well. I think that would be really fun to watch. It's kind of like a mini Daytona. It really is a mini Daytona when you think about it, because of the it's 1.5 miles as opposed to 2.5 mile. Very similar infield layout, more or less. It's not a very similar layout. It's just the way they're making the most out of the space that they have, and it is a nice layout. There's elevation change, which is something that Daytona does not have. There is slight elevation change at the Charlotte Road Course, which is, I think, one of the coolest features about that track. The track here, however, Road America, this track, there's a lot of facts about this track that we can go into. This is one of the most historic tracks ever in the world, period. It's been a staple in sports car racing of all kinds for as long as people can remember. We've seen everything from Can-Am to old, way back in the day, the old GTs, Ford GT, the original Ford GTs, the Group C era of driving, the IMSA, when IMSA was first getting started, the Group C's, those powerful Porsche 919s that, not 919s, the, 919, no, that's the new ones, the Porsche, what were they? They just slipped my 908s were the old ones as well. Man, they had just slipped my mind. I had it 968s. That's what I was thinking. 962s, 96, and all that. That was the era I was talking about. There's a lot of Porsche in my brain right now. I apologize for getting those mixed up. The 919 is the new one. The more recent one. It's not the new one, but it is the new one in the sense that it's the most recent one, but there's no new one out right now. I digress. The Porsche 962s were the car I was thinking about. They kind of dominated the scene for a long time, and they are still one of my favorite cars to see and drive in various different simulators. But This track, about just over 4 mile long track. It is a really fast track, and a lot of drivers favor it. It is probably the most enjoyable track to race on if you're just starting to get into perhaps road course racing for the first time. If that is the thing that you're trying to get into and you're not really sure where to start, I would say this is a good starting point. It's not too difficult. It still offers a challenge. It's long enough where you really feel like you're going somewhere. The elevation changes. There's different types of turns. There's different types of straights. There's different types of braking zones. It really lets you experiment with a road course for the first time. You get your feet wet and doesn't punish you, as there's plenty of runoff that you can hit, but not so much runoff that you feel like you can just go off the track indefinitely without any consequences. There is still grass littered around the racetrack that will catch you out if you're not careful. It is a beautiful racetrack. We go to it a lot here on the Flatout Racing Network in the various series. We have the Fuel IndyCar series has raced here several times. I think some of the NASCAR Grand National series that race here, and now the USRA American Le Mans series has made their presence known here tonight. It's about 13 minutes 20, make that 17 seconds to go in the race. Dan Neese, still your leader. He's pulled about a 13.5-second gap this time around to Witt. The track is bathed in darkness. We have just a little bit of daylight overhead, but not a whole lot. We have basically the track now is lit up and illuminated by the car's headlights, which is how proper endurance racing usually goes out, as the track gets very dark and cannot be seen. Again, I say that, and this is what I thought. I didn't think that the prototypes can make it all the way to the end on fuel, and I was correct. Dan Neese coming down pit road again. This will be his final stop of the race. Cannot make it the entire way, and that means that so too Alex Witt, Herb, Hurley, Blemengrantz, and Mitchell will have to come down pit road and get fuel for these cars. Now, this plays into Neese's hands. He can get the minimum amount of fuel, get back on the racetrack, does not need to take tires at this stage. So there's only going to be 12 minutes to go in the race. So, it's good news for him. Has Alex Witt been saving fuel is the next question. We'll have to see. He has been considerably slower. I don't think that he's been that much slower to the point where he would be saving that much fuel, but he has stayed out. He came down a lap later than Neese did the last time around. So if all goes the way it should, we should be seeing him down pit road this time or maybe the next lap if he has saved some fuel. Justin Herb has stayed out as well, I believe. Yeah, he's running just ahead of Witt at the moment, so he's about ready to be put a lap down. Kevin Hurley is also running on the racetrack as we're going through the field for your prototype drivers. He's actually gotten up to Landenberg, going around Landenberg now into turn number 3. And Blemengrantz is actually also running on the racetrack at the moment as well. Witt is now going down the run into Canada Corner. Once again, we have turned 56 laps so far tonight in this event, and we're about 11 minutes to go. It's down to crunch time now. Can Witt get on and off pit road without losing a ton of time? Now, the time you spend on the limiter is a long time here. This pit road is pretty long, although you wait till you get to the top of the hill before you flip the limiter on. So you've got at least that much time, and he is going to come in this lap. So we'll have to see what his overall pit stop time will be, as looks like that Neese's overall stop, his lane time was 46.5 seconds. So we'll have to see if Witt can have a comparable stop. He's about a 30-second advantage right now. So if it goes the way that Neese's stop did, then that should go back to being about a 15-second advantage for Neese. But we'll keep an eye on Witt as he makes his stop, as this will be the last time that we see our leaders on pit road for the prototypes. And there he goes. So Dan Neese has made the pass back on Alex Witt and is now back in the lead of the race. Under 10 minutes to go in the race. We'll look back and see where our leaders are running. Tyler Landenberg running first place in the GT2. He's been there pretty much since the onset of this race, has not really fallen back out of the lead. He was battling with De La Sala for a while, and then De La Sala had some issues midway through the race and fell back to now a third place run. Not a finish yet. Nothing is final until the checkered flag comes out. Warren Keith can cruise at this point in time in GT3. He is opened up a considerable gap to second place, which is Travis Stevens, and gotta think that this is probably what he was hoping for a fantastic run in this race. And being the president of the USRA, you gotta think that it is probably a dream come true to be able to run in his own series. This is the first time he's done it, so running in his own series, this has been a labor of love for Warren and others that have put this season on for this championship. He was talking to me about a month ago saying that this is one of the things that he really wanted to do and he really wanted to bring to the table, and doing a fantastic job at the moment with his efforts. And you gotta think that it feels special to be not only running in your own series but leading in your own series and making that Audi shine. This will be the first time that an Audi has won in this season. It'll be the first time that a different manufacturer outside of Corvette or Mercedes has won in any of the GT divisions if he can get to the end of the race. That is Dane Nice. This is just an Herb who won last week, is not going to get the win this week, unfortunately, unless things go dramatically south for Nice and Witt, as he is running about almost a whole lap back to the leader Nice. And still a good run for that Acura team. It's been a bit of an up and down, topsy-turvy season for... Whoa, that was almost even more. He almost ran to the back end. I think that's Hana that he almost ran to the back end of, but it's been a bit of an up and down season for this Acura team, and they put together a pretty good program. He's going to get a third place, net third place at the moment if he can get around to the end of the race, and so far so good for that 23 team. We should see how he does for the rest of the season. Kevin Hurley is running a very nice, solid race, as he always does in this number 21 machine. And then we go back to Blemengratz, who is only about 10 seconds back. I don't think he has enough time to really run that down. He is making up some considerable time, though, so he might be able to challenge for the fourth place position. But he's got a bit of a ways to go, about 9.5 seconds now, if he wants to make up that much ground to get back to the leader. Tyler Landenberg again is your leader. Caleb Smith, first race in this series, and he is on track for a second place finish in class. He's actually going to get passed by, that's Herb at the moment, going down to 5 and going a bit wide to let him through. So good run so far for this team. We should see him do well. If he comes back and races more in this series, he is a good addition into this series, as the track is now completely dark, not a glimmer, not even a tiny glimmer of daylight for these drivers, as now all we have are the lights on the cars illuminating the track. This is Michael De La Sala, who is a bit of an unfortunate situation. Also his first start in this series, and really wanted to make an impact, and then he did, except it was into the outside retaining wall. He is running third place overall, which, considering what happened, this is about as much as he could have hoped for, and has done a great job to salvage whatever he could from this race, running very well in the third place position after his misfortune earlier on. And Noel Hana, who we really haven't talked a whole lot about tonight, he really hasn't been making much noise tonight. He's been a very respectful driver, not really getting in anybody's way, running his line the way he should. This 7 car has showed pace in practice, didn't really do much of anything in qualifying, and then when the race started, he kind of drifted back. Now about 1 minute and 7 seconds back to De La Sala. So that just sees how his lap times have been. Still on the lead lap as far as GTs go, so not a lap down, but you got to think that he might have wanted a better result out of tonight, but showing some good starting pace. We should see him do well if he does come back and race in this series going forward. Again, Warren Keith, we've touched on him running in the first place position in GT3, and then back to the second place in GT3. That is going to be that is going to be Travis Stevens running in the second place position in GT3. He is had a bit of misfortune as well. He kind of nosed it into the wall coming out of turn 7, so that car is a little bit worse for wear at the moment than he would have liked, but still running very well and running. He can't get any worse than second place in class, so he can't really be too upset with whatever finish he gets, and he has made the most of a tough situation, still running on the racetrack. Daniel Mitchell is on pit road. He's been there for a while now, so something must have happened to Daniel Mitchell that we didn't see, or else he has just parked it again and hasn't gotten back on track. So Mitchell with another off potentially somewhere on the racetrack. This happened a while back and would take a while to go find, so probably not going to go find that, but we'll say he went off, and we'll have to see if we can get a word on what might have happened to him later on. But about 3 minutes to go in the race, so judging by where Nice is now, that should give us about 2 laps before the end of this race, and Nice has been on cruise control ever since the final stop. It's been pretty solid for the 14 team. I keep making reference back to VIR, and if you didn't see VIR, then I strongly recommend you go back and watch what happened at VIR. It was one of the most chaotic races that could have happened to any of these prototype drivers, and ended up being one of those races that a lot of these guys kind of wanted to put in the back of their minds and not think about, because it was just that for all the prototype drivers. The GT drivers didn't really have that much happen to them, but these prototypes, the way that these cars are set up and designed, they really are a bit too fast, I think, for VIR. But they ran anyway, and they put on a fantastic race. Don't get me wrong, the race was great. It's just that these drivers were slipping and sliding, trying to find the proper lines to get through, and just could not keep some of their cars on the racetrack. I think about every prototype driver went off track at some point in that race, and really hurt the efforts of some of them, including Nice and Witt. In fact, if you look at your prototype drivers, you can take every one of them outside of Mitchell because he wasn't there. Take all those drivers and then say that they had an issue. They had an issue at that race. The winner of that race was Justin Erb, who survived the track more or less than he just flat out ran fastest. And in endurance racing, that's kind of what it's all about sometimes. Sometimes it's not all about flat out pace. Sometimes it really is about survival. As white flag in the air for Dan Nice. He's taken the final lap of this event tonight, and there is a car on pit road. That is the 23 of Erb on pit road. He's just now coming to a stop. Nothing really to lose there. This has going to be the final lap for the leader, Nice. He is going to cruise around for a victory tonight. A 22-second gap back to Alex Witt is what Dan Nice has. This is more on par with what we've seen with Nice all season long. He won by 2 full laps at Sebring. He just come off of, whoa, he loops it around. I say that, and then he loops it in turn 5. Man, the commentator's curse strikes again. I am so sorry, Dan Nice. That is not what I intended. He does have a big enough lead, though, that might not hurt him, though. He loops it going through 5. That is incredible. I'll say that much. That's incredible. Now, this harkens back to Daytona, though, because he was having some problems at Daytona with looping in turn 1. He had a big lead there, too. At Daytona, he had a massive lead. It was So much so that he could spin around. He spun around in the same spot lap after lap and still held the lead. So again, Nice with a more dominated run. This is something that we've normally seen out of him going through Canada corner. The final time here tonight, now a 16-second lead rather than a 22-second lead. Still a dominating performance. Wasn't always like this, but he's managed to come out on top yet again in Prototype 2. He's going to get the overall win for the third time this season. Going down the front straightaway, Dan Nice for the number 14 Prototype team is going to come around, take the checkered flag. Nice, your overall winner and your winner in Prototype 2. Fantastic run for this team, who really has set himself up to be the most dominant force in this series. Wholesale, full stop. As we go back to look and see who our next leader to cross the line is going to be, and that's going to be the 47. He's still about halfway through the lap, so a long way to go for the 47 car, who Warren Keith has, again, came into this race. He's the president of the USRA ALMS. He is the first time he's raced in his own series this season, so kind of have a feel-good moment. He has led a majority of this race for the GT3 class. He got out front, kind of stuck with it. You know he's smiling behind that helmet right now. He is loving this, kind of just cruising around this track. Not really fully up to pace is that car. This is the first time also that something other than a Mercedes or a Corvette has won in the GT classes. So you got to be thinking he's feeling good after that in this beautiful Audi R8, which harkens back to the Flying Lizards team, and a beautiful throwback scheme to that team as he's slowing down considerably. He's soaking it all in. He knows that he is, he's cruising on to this victory. Is also about ready to catch him is the 91 of Landenberg, who is going to be making his way around the track. Landenberg, first win for him this season as well. He has been so close. So close. And now he's also going to get this win. The two of them in tandem going down the front straightaway. The Corvette winner, Tyler Landenberg. The GT3 winner going to be Warren Keith as they cross the line in tandem. A fantastic sight here at Road America as both the GT leaders come through to take the checkered flag. Wow, a special moment for sure for both these drivers. And Landenberg with his first win this season, like I mentioned. Fantastic. He's been so close all season long. Lost out. Well, actually, no, he won at Sebring, so forget what I was saying. He won at Sebring, so back in victory lane since Sebring. So it's been almost a whole month. It has been a whole month since he's gone to victory lane. So back in victory lane is Tyler Landenberg with a special moment down the front straightaway. And just an overall fantastic race that these drivers have been a part of, as the fans are on their feet. They love to see this kind of racing, proper endurance racing, as the darkness has taken over the racetrack. Completely dark tonight around the racing circuit. It's kind of ghostly out there. It's getting close to Halloween, so nice ghostly track to witness this race at, as our winners are going around the track. Take a look at your finishing order, and that is going to be where everyone runs. This is Dan Nice coming around again. He is the winner tonight overall. Witt is going to get a second place finish. Good bounce back from VIR, where he made his first start. Justin Erb is going to get third place on the day. So a good solid run for the 23 team. He's going to have those solid runs. If they can stack up, then he might have something for some of these top drivers, because he is, I believe, at this point, a second place in the standings. So, going to keep that momentum flying through. Is Tyler Landenberg, again, hasn't won since Sebring, so it's been over a month since then. That was a 2.5-hour race. Another longer one. This time, it's going to go to Landenberg again, and he is going to be super happy. Corvette has proven their dominance week after week, having won all of the races in GT2 thus far. Warren Keith gets Audi their first win on the season in the 47 car. coming around his victory lap. I think they're going to take a bit of a winner's picture moment on the front straightaways. They're coming up to these drivers here. Nice is sitting on pit road or sitting on the front straightaway at the moment, and now here comes Landenberg and Warren Keith as Keith is going to stop it on the racetrack and going to burn it down here tonight. Warren Keith, the winner here, burning it down for the fans, and Landenberg also on the racetrack as all three of them burning it down for the fans here tonight as, putting on a smoke show for everyone. This is incredible. All three of the winners putting it on for all of us. This is something special. This is something we don't normally get to see in endurance racing, where all three of the winners get to just use up their stuff, burn it down for our entertainment. This is fantastic. And given that it's at night, it's even cooler. The smoke really illuminates when it's in the headlights. This is, just look at that. That is so cool. I love, as a racing fan, first and foremost, this is probably the most unique thing that I have seen wholesale in my broadcasting career, certainly in the times that I have been sim racing. And again, something you just don't commonly see is Nice is going to take it back to victory lane, and looks like Landenberg is going to continue to burn it down tonight. And so too is Warren Keith. Both of these drivers, they deserve it. They deserve every bit that they have, because this has been a test of attrition. This has been very, very tough for some of these drivers. And, it's been a long road for this particular race. And you got to think that it's going to be a longer road ahead for these drivers, because they have a lot of very intense racing further on in the season. We touched on it earlier that these races are going to get longer. They're going to get a little bit more intense as they go on, as we got Indianapolis, and that would be the Charlotte Road Course coming up directly after these two races, as that's going to be our next races on the schedule. But we're going to see if we can get some of these winners into the booth for some interviews. At the moment, we're going to quickly go through and see who we've got. We've got Landenberg, and we've got our GT3 winner at the moment. So let's see if we can get them into the booth. We're going to start with our GT3 winner. That will be Mr. Warren Keith. Hey, Warren, it is Anthony in the booth. You got me.
I do.
Well, you, for the first time this season, have started the race in the Audi. You have driven the wheels off of this thing and find yourself the winner in GT3. Now, this obviously has not been an easy race for you, but how does it feel going into this race, knowing that the Audis have not been particularly fast this season, but you still somehow pull out one of the most dominant runs that the Audis have put on so far this season?
I don't think the Audi's just been slow. I just think that, it's just a big saturation of Mercs. The GT3 class tonight, a lot of them had it off because obviously World Series and stuff, people wanted to watch, and I don't blame them. So we took advantage of it. The Audi, we have a good setup for this track, and, she was just stable until they weren't stable through the carousel. Obviously, went off maybe once or twice tonight. But yeah, this Flying Lizard tribute scheme really put on a dominant performance, and I'm happy it's in victory lane.
Yeah, you had a couple off moments. A lot of drivers had a couple off moments throughout the carousel. That was one of the places where, like you said, was one of the trouble spots throughout the entire race. And just the way that you drove tonight, how does it feel being not only the league's president, but also knowing that you have to pull double duty as driving and kind of a marshaling for this race, knowing that you have to do all of that under the same roof? It's got to be kind of the similar feel as an owner driver, where you have a lot of responsibility, but you just want to go out and race. And how does that feel as a driver, knowing that you have all those duties to do as well?
Well, when I'm out there with these guys, that all goes out the window because I'm in their domain. I got to show the same respect, same driving etiquette. So, I don't push it that, hey, I'm the president, race me clean. I raced them as hard as I could. I dive bombed Travis earlier. So it's, it doesn't matter. But off the track, yeah, when I'm up in the tower, it's a whole other story. But on the track, I'm out there to have fun. Like tonight, I just said to myself, I'll race a couple races this season with you guys, and I did tonight, and maybe a couple more in the future.
Indeed so. And you, again, the GT3 field was the smallest that we saw this season. Obviously, the 24 hours of spa is going on right now, so that might be the reason why there wasn't so many GT3s in the field because, well, they're all at spa right now. But still, fantastic run for the GT3s overall. Now, next week, you guys are going to Indianapolis, which is
Yeah.
a much different racetrack than this racetrack, but still is going to be offering some pretty good entertainment, I think. How are you looking forward to Indianapolis?
Yeah, well, we had a schedule adjustment not too long ago, about a week or so ago. So next week we're going to Belle Isle.
Oh,
Yeah, terrifying. But that and Mid Ohio got changed to Indy, so those are the only two that changed. So Belle Isle next week's going to be a lot different animal than this. Obviously tight quarters. I think you know, you know, you have all this room in the world here at Road America and all the tracks we've went to. VIR, you got a moon, of space to go off. But next week's going to be a whole other animal, and I think the drivers are going to have to take it a lot more lightly than they are now.
indeed. So now I've been saying all broadcast long that we're going to Indianapolis. This changes a lot of things though, because Belle Isle, if you don't know, Belle Isle is a very bumpy street circuit, and you're putting some of the fastest cars wholesale, full stop on the racetrack, and then putting slower cars on the racetrack that they have to get around. So it's going to be one heck of a race to do. But Warren, it feels kind of weird asking you this because you're usually up in the booth with me. But we're gonna let the floor off to you for any shout outs you want to make.
Yeah, obviously, thanks to everyone who comes out for these races week in and week out. They don't have to come out, but they do, and that shows, that makes me happy. Because I put my time and effort into, paying for broadcasts and stuff. So, thank you to all who come out and who are going to come out later in the season, especially for Petit Le Mans. Hopefully, we have a big crowd for that. But also like to thank Sankey Motorsports, and VRS for their setups, banger setups that they make over there.
That is Warren Keith, the winner in GT3. And we should see you do well if you choose to race in some of the races in the future. Have a great rest of your night, Warren, and we'll see you next week probably.
Thank you, Anthony.
Again, that was your winner in GT3. We're going to pull in our winner from GT2, that being Tyler Landenberg in the Corvette entry. Hey, Tyler, it is Anthony in the booth. You got us.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Well, it seems that you have found your mojo again as you got in that Corvette into victory lane. I believe you were the winner from Sebring as well, so back in victory lane for this Corvette team. And
Yep.
how does it feel being back here in victory lane?
Honestly, just the last two races, I felt I really had a bad setup for each of those. Like it kept getting loose off some of the corners and wasn't really competitive. Fortunately, I got P2 in both of those, I believe. I don't remember off the top of my head. So, but it's fortunate to be back here in victory lane. So, yeah.
So overall, how was the race going from your perspective? Because we saw that you were in a battle with, I believe that was the other Corvette entry of that was Della Sala. I think that was the Corvette that was battling with you. Now you guys were battling for a long time throughout the race, and it seemed like that they were about matched on pace. But then Della Sala had an issue midway through the race that kind of gave you an opportunity to pull away. But what was the race overall from your perspective? How comfortable did you feel with the car tonight?
Honestly, tonight I felt way more comfortable than I did the last two races. And I'd just like to point out the guy that I was semi battling was my teammate from Whiplash Racing. Shout out to him. So he's fortunately he got P3 as well. So yeah, car felt really good on both our ends. So yeah.
That's good for Whiplash. Both the cars did well, and when Della Sala kind of hit the wall a little bit, it kind of maybe dampened a little bit, but he came back and finished third, so that was a good run on the racetrack as well. But again, with the dominating runs that we've seen with these Corvettes have over the rest of the any car that really seems to come into the GT2s, it seems like that Corvette is the clear option for some of these teams looking to enter into this GT2 class going forward. But next week, it's going to be Belle Isle. And Belle Isle is known for being one of the bumpiest and tightest street circuits on any kind of racing calendar in the North American area. And how are you looking forward to that race? Do you think that maybe you can go back to victory lane with the Corvettes, or do you think that maybe one of the other cars might have something to show for?
Uh, that being said, with how it's P2 and GTE, I might not compete, but I'm definitely will watch. So yeah, I don't really have any intentions to run Detroit. So
I gotcha. I gotcha. But again, congratulations on your finish tonight. It
thank
was
you.
a kind of an uphill battle from, well, not really an uphill battle. It was a battle with your teammate throughout much of the race,
Yeah.
and some interesting pit strategies too. I have to say that is a question I have to ask. Is that pit strategy where you came in with your teammate right after the prototypes did?
Yes.
Did you intend
So
to do that?
yes.
Okay,
So I tried to plan it out where we would take as little fuel as possible on each stop. So yeah, that's I'm not going to reveal too much about that.
I gotcha. Okay.
So
We didn't know if
that's
there was maybe a problem that you guys had that you had to pit early or not, but
no,
that clears it up then.
yeah,
All right,
it was just
cool.
strategy. So
All right.
I'm actually looking through the results. Someone did one stop, so might have to relook at pit strategy in the 2 hour races.
I believe that was the
Yep.
BMW driver of Caleb
Yes.
Smith that made a one stop.
Yes.
That's why I was using that as a point of reference because Caleb Smith didn't come down pit road till about halfway. So I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know what's going on here. But
Must
still,
must have saved fuel under yellow more than we did.
had to have. That was about the only thing. I think the BMWs might have a little bit extra on the way of fuel that they can carry, but
Yeah.
have to go back and look at the schematics of those. But once again, fantastic run for you tonight. Second win this season, and all overall the Corvettes have been dominant all season long. But before we let you go, we're gonna let you have the floor for some shout outs.
Shout out to Michael Del Sala for getting P3. Shout out to Whiplash Racing. I need to get my paint updated, so if he's watching, update the paint. He knows who he is. So yeah.
And that is Tyler Landenberg, winner of the GT2 category, and we look forward to seeing you for the rest of the season.
Yep, thank you.
Now we're going to get our winner from Prototype 2 and our overall winner here into the booth, that being Dan Neese, his third win this season. Hey, Dan, it's Anthony in the booth. You got me.
Yeah.
Well, you're back in victory lane after a bit of a woeful VIR. That's been a point of talking pretty much all night as we were comparing this race to VIR. But coming off the heels of VIR, you made the most out of tonight. You were able to get into the lead late in the first hour and then basically never looked back, but was in a battle for pretty much most of the midway part of the race. How confident did you feel with your car tonight? Because it looked like it was just as fast as we're used to seeing it.
I mean, if you want to be honest with you, I was kind of nervous. I didn't know if Alex was just pulling some insane move on me or something and just wasn't going to pit for the final stop. Because he did. He was the only person that didn't take tires the entire race. I took him on my second stop just because they were already at 40%, and I was like, "There's no way I'm doing Daytona all over." So, I was really nervous with that, but honestly, blows my mind how fast that kid is for not even driving an LMP2 really at all. The fact that I'm not saying I'm an insane driver either, but the fact that he can even somewhat keep up with me when that's the only car I drive says a lot about him as a driver. So shout out to him. He definitely had me pushing very hard at the very beginning to try to catch up to him after getting that EOL. But, did that 6 hour this morning, and then right as it got done, I was like, you know what, I'll go to that Road America race. So hopped in and had to start at the back because I missed the briefing or whatever. But yeah, really liked this track. It felt good. Car felt awesome. It's really cool to be able to race it at night again, like I did during the 6 hour. So
Yeah, the nighttime here and the nighttime really at any track for GT cars are super fun to watch as a broadcaster, and I know that racing them it's also just as fun. And the race tonight. Now, speaking back at VIR, we saw the prototype drivers have a lot of problems with that racetrack. It seemed like everyone that could have an issue did have an issue, but then this race it was a stark contrast. This track really plays into the prototypes, how they handle and just overall the speed difference that you get from the prototypes that at this track that you don't get at other tracks. And speaking on that topic, though, we saw that we did have a lot of close battles with the GTs that kind of caught a lot of drivers out in the carousel when the prototypes were trying to go around there too. Now we saw, I believe you at one point almost got off onto the through the carousel, and certainly some drivers behind you did. Was one of the more troubling spots on the racetrack whenever you had to make a pass on a couple of GTs and you were approaching that section of the racetrack?
honestly, it's not that bad, but like easiest way to explain it is like the hardest parts to pass on here is right after turn 5 going up the hill, that whole sector, like the left-hander at the top of that hill, and then the fast right-hander after that, like cannot pass through there. But carousel's pretty easy. You just gotta, the main thing with that is just ensuring that both people know what's going on at the same time. So it's tough because I'm sure a lot of the guys in here like don't really do too much multi-class stuff, so they're probably not too fond or used to seeing basically like an insanely fast car whipping on the outside of them going through a turn that's already pretty on rails. But it's not that hard. Like whenever you're, like as long as both parties are paying attention, there shouldn't be a problem. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you see the flashing headlights, then get out of the way. In other words, if you're not battling for position. And multi-class endurance racing is one of the more unique styles of racing throughout the entire world, Full Sail. But we're going to go to a very unique track next week out. That would being Belle Isle now. Putting these cars together on Belle Isle, that might be a recipe for some interesting racing. How are you looking forward going into Belle Isle off the success of tonight? You're looking for your 4th win of the season going into race 5. How confident do you feel that you can maybe pull one out at Belle Isle as well?
Unfortunately, I'm not racing Belle Isle.
Oh.
I have some prior engagements for a different championship that it's like the final race, and it's an 8-hour. So it won't finish until like right as the race starts. And if you were me, I don't think that you'd want to go from doing an 8-hour race at Spa to another longer race at Belle Isle, which is like one of the most demanding tracks on iRacing. So I'll be sitting that one out, but I will be checking out the broadcast to see how.
Yeah, I would not want to jump into that either. I had no idea you were racing an 8-hour race, man. That's a long one too. That's good luck in that race as well. And well, congratulations on your win tonight. It's your 3rd win this season. Sebring, Daytona, and now Road America. Any tracks? I'll ask you this question: any tracks on the season so far that you're looking forward to going forward in this season that you might be pointing at that you really want to win this race over the other ones?
I mean, I'm honestly excited for all of them. It's pretty solid schedule from there out. I put in a lot of practice in the Roval GTE, so when Brody comes back, he better be ready. I know he's a NASCAR guy usually, so he's done a lot of practice at the Roval, but I made a Smurf account for fun to help some of the guys that have lower I rating on my team to be able to do races with them where I'm like basically not putting them up against 3K I rating guys whenever we go into a race. So my I rating's like 2K on that account. And I was doing the GTEs at IMSA last week, and there was one race. It was a full GTE field. I started in the very back, and I passed 38 cars and won the race after 45 minutes. So I wouldn't say I'm insanely fast there, but I put in a lot of practice in the Corvette, especially last week doing that, and then the endurance race at Watkins Glen in the Corvette. Really like that car. I hadn't driven it at all before that week, but I'm really excited for the Roval and Watkins Glen. It's one of my favorite tracks. I'm always pretty fast there. Indianapolis, my home track, but I'm honestly not really good at the old layout on the road course. I'm not a huge fan of it, but should be interesting to see how IMSA is there. And then, I did Petit Le Mans a couple weeks ago, and then we got second in that, and I think second split or third split on Saturday. So I'm really excited to go back there. I'm really interested to see how it's going to be with all these guys. I really hope that some of them will practice multi-class stuff, because I don't know if you've ever watched the races at Petit Le Mans, but it is very, very, very intense. And I will say, out of all the endurance races I've done, I would rather do a 24-hour race at Nürburgring before doing Petit Le Mans again, because of how tough it is. It's insanely hard with the traffic and everything like that. There's I don't want to go off on a ramble here, but the S's after turn 1, you're going down the hill. If you thought the carousel was rough here tonight, that place is going to be nothing but trouble the entire race. I can promise you that. Just because of how much that turn itself is the most you have to be paying attention, both parties, to figure out what's going on, or some really bad stuff can happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Road Atlanta, one of the tightest and fastest tracks that we're going to go to on this schedule. And, Indianapolis, the IMSA cars at Indianapolis, we saw that we had the newest endurance race to the world schedule being the 8 hours of Indianapolis. So with the success of that, maybe this might be a precursor into maybe some other things happening in Indianapolis. But the USRA is going to be the first to say that they're going to throw their name into the bucket for Indianapolis, and can't wait to see that. Also, the Charlotte road course that we're going to be going to later on the season. But Dan, I again congratulate you on your 3rd overall win this season, and we're going to let the floor off to you for any shout outs you want to make before we let you go.
Just shout out Blue Chew Americas, bluechew.com, chew it and do it. Won't go any more past that. Shout out to my whole team. They put in a lot of work this weekend. We had some good results at Le Mans. Honestly, probably one of the hardest 6-hour races I've ever done. I am very mentally drained. I haven't ate dinner yet, so you go eat dinner and then watch the rest of the 24 hours of Spa. So if you haven't watched that, that's another shout out. Go watch the 24 hours of Spa. It's on YouTube for free. It is a very good race to watch. And if you've never checked it out, GT3 racing, they're racing insanely hard the whole time. It's a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to be tuning into that. And once again, shout out to Alex. Insane how fast he is, especially without any experience in the LMP2 at all. I did a little, because I saw him at VIR beating me. I mean, granted, I had never driven that track before, didn't put any practice in before the race. Was using Interlagos setup there, which was probably not the greatest idea either. But I tried a couple setups and couldn't figure anything out. But the fact that he is that quick, even at Road America, keeping up with me pretty much the entire race, says a lot about him as a driver. So I'm sure he'll be someone to look out on, especially going on in the future if he does more LMP2 stuff. So shout out to him. And shout out to you guys for broadcasting this. Appreciate it.
We thank you for coming up in the booth and sharing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the season. And yeah, I agree with you. Go watch Spa. I've had it on in the background this entire time, and Ferrari was leading at one point, so put that in your belt of 2020. We'll see you next time, Dan, and have a great rest of your night.
You as well. Thank you very much.
As we wrap up the broadcast here tonight, I believe that Warren is still up here in the booth with me. If I can get Warren on the horn here. Warren, are you there? I don't think Warren's there. That's all right. Warren doesn't have to be there.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, Warren is there. Hey, how are you doing, Warren?
Yeah, I'm good. I thought I was unmuted, but I wasn't.
Hey, yeah, we don't have your server muted this time. That was a gap that if you go back and watch the last race, you'll figure out what I'm talking about. But this was a great race overall. Nice to see that endurance racing has made a full stay on the Flatout Racing Network, and I want to thank you personally for giving me the opportunity, because tonight I've had nothing but endurance racing, and I've loved every minute of it. So it's been a fantastic race tonight.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to have the Flatout Racing Network over here covering us.
So going forward in the season, I know that Warren has touched on it already, but there is nonstop action going through the rest of the season. You got Belle Isle next. You've got the Charlotte Road Course. You have got, after that, you have, I'm looking at the schedule, which I got to pull over because I have put it off the screen. There we go. We have Watkins Glen, Mid-Ohio. I'm sorry, that's now going to be Indianapolis. You've got Laguna Seca, and then Petit Le Mans, which is at Road Atlanta. So a solid schedule coming up for the rest of the season. And Warren, do you have any thoughts of how the season is shaped up so far in your eyes? And has it met expectations? And are you looking forward to the rest of the season?
Oh yeah, we have Belle Isle next week. Like I said, that's going to be a demanding track. Then we go to Charlotte. That's going to be a nice little break for the P2 guys. I know they're going to want to race the GTs as much as anybody else. And then we start getting to the season stretch with some of the, I think, toughest straight races in a row. So it's going to be interesting to see how the season finishes out, and who will take the crown come at Petit Le Mans, because right now, after this race, points are going to be tight in almost every category.
Indeed, so is that you have 3 categories of racing all season long, so you get your fix no matter who you support or what type of racing you like. Prototypes, GTs, and 2 classes. And I want to say again, thank you for having me here, Warren, and thank you for watching tonight's race from Road America. Like I said, next week we're going to be at Belle Isle, so you don't want to miss that race either. For Warren Keith, my name is Anthony McCurry. Thank you for tuning into the Flatout Racing Network for the USRA American Le Mans Series. Have a great rest of your night. There's plenty of racing going on right now, so if you're still not done with your racing fix, you've got the 24 hours of Spa. You've got, I think that we have another broadcast on FRN happening right now. We have FTF happening right now. We have got so much happening this week in terms of broadcasting, so there's plenty of stuff for you to go watch. And I like to say thank you to Flatout Racing Network for giving me a chance to broadcast as well. Again, thank you for watching tonight. We'll see you very soon here on the Flatout Racing Network. Have a great rest of your night, everyone.